Good morning, good morning. Happy Monday. It is Monday, May 12th, 2025 at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, broadcasting from Austin, Texas, AustinTexas.com. Austin, Texas. I've been up for a couple of hours, but not finding my groove yet. Gotta figure it out. Haven't found my groove. What are we gonna do? Hey, my name is Keith. I created this stream as a place to hang out, as an appointment you can put on your calendar. If you are in the job market, if you are looking for a job in tech, the hardest thing about looking for a job is staying consistent. And so I created this stream as just one place that you can kind of make a habit, build a habit out of getting up every morning, jumping on the stream, hearing me talk about tech and what's going on in the job market, and getting those job applications out. Been doing this since the January 1st. Did a couple of test streams before that, but we've been broadcasting, simulcasting on Twitch, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, Monday through Friday at this time, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, we talk about two things on the show, as I said. First, job postings, see what's like in the job, in the tech space. And then we look at some news. So let's jump into that. The first set of graphs you're going to see here are entry-level JavaScript developer roles. I've been collecting this data for almost 3 years. And it gives us one little peek into what's going on into the tech space. I've been looking at entry-level positions because my day job is to manage a coding school to help people learn to code and get into the industry. But we made a pivot last year, and we've refocused on upskillers. We will still take people who are trying to break into the industry, but right now, the way the job market is, it's a harder job market to sort of break into. If you're already educated and you're trying to break in, that's great. If you're new and fresh and starting out, it's a little harder argument to make these days. But there are tons and tons of people who are working in industry, working in tech like myself, who've been working for over 30 years, but we continually need to upgrade our skills. Right, so that's our focus. But if we look at this entry-level job postings for the last 7 days, we'll see there's kind of a slight dip there. If we expand that out to 6 months, we can see that we're on the low end of that trend line. If we look back 6 months ago, we're off the number of job postings that were coming out 6 months ago. I don't know, maybe 10%, 15%. But if we look back a full year, we can see that we're off considerably, probably 40% off of the numbers where we were last year. So those aren't great numbers. We had a lot of layoffs last year. And then this year, because of Doge, a lot more people entering the marketplace. And because of the uncertainty in the market, we'll talk a little bit about more of that in the news, but the uncertainty in the market has put companies in hiring freezes and cautious approach to what their goals are this year. Right. So if since the first of the year, I've expanded beyond that entry-level role, and now I'm tracking all the JavaScript jobs, and we can see that starting on January 1st, coming out of the holiday, we had a nice little pop. But then just about the same time as the inauguration, everything kind of went flat with a little bit of volatility in there. And then we'll see this dip that was happening here. This was when the tariffs really kicked in. The blue line is all the JavaScript jobs. That's that gives us a good temperature on where the industry is, but it doesn't help you in the job market. But the red line here is remote jobs. So that does help you. If you happen to be in Walla Walla or Poughkeepsie and there aren't as many jobs available for you locally, you can still apply to all those jobs being posted that are remote. But what do those remote jobs look like in terms of entry-level, mid-level, and senior-level roles? For in-person roles, we'll see that the entry-level is in blue here, the mid-level is in red, and the senior-level roles are in yellow. Entry and senior have been fairly stable through the year so far. They've been flat, but consistent. There's a bit more up and down in the mid-level roles, but they are also starting to trend back up. If we look at the remote version, these are jobs that you can also apply for. We see the same trends, although we have seen a bit of in the mid-level roles, a bit of a slide in terms of the number of overall job postings for mid-level remote roles. All right. I spend too much of my time during the day checking out what's going on LinkedIn. In part because that's where our industry talks to itself. That's where technology in specific, but business in more general terms, communicates with each other, but also because they've got this nice little news feed on there, and that news feed generally stays pretty updated. This story was updated 12 minutes ago. 12 minutes ago when I opened it up. It's probably a little bit longer now. But headline today, U.S. and China announced a deal. Saw that when I woke up. They said Monday that they would lower many tariffs between the two countries for 90 days, a move that resets the tone between the world's two largest companies, the Wall Street Journal said. The announcements also includes a reduction in U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports to 30% from its 145% current status, and China is lowering its levy on American goods to 10% from the 125%. The news comes after a weekend of negotiation between both nations in Geneva, Switzerland. I mean, in some ways, this was inevitable. Those numbers, those crazy 125, 145% numbers were not sustainable, and everybody knew that. But a 90-day reprieve. Our president has been great about announcing these new tariffs, and then instead of doing the deal, finalizing the deal, figuring out what the deal is, he puts a pause button on it. We're doing the hokey pokey with the pauses, right? This is, again, there might be a short-term pop on the stock market like we're seeing today, but that's not a sustainable. Again, business needs to be able to reasonably forecast, or at least believe that their forecasts are reasonable for outlook, so they can determine, hey, we want to grow, we want to add more people, we want to build new products, we want to add new features, we want to make more sales. And all of this uncertainty about pricing, about about supply chains, makes it impossible for them to make reasonable assumptions about what they can order and what it's going to cost them. Now, companies today are ordering products to be sold in the fall and in the winter. So that 90 days maybe buys them enough time to make sure that they can get some orders in. But again, what happens if the talks fail in 90 days and the tariffs come right back on, and they've ordered a bunch of stuff and now it shows up at the ports with 145% levy on there, and they got to spend millions and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars to get their stuff out of hock to make sure they have products on the shelves for Christmas. Right? It is not a way to run a business. But ahead of that, U.S. stocks opened sharply higher on Monday, led by a surge in the tech sector after the U.S. and China agreed to slash tariffs on each other's goods. Temporarily slash. The S&P 500 was up nearly 3%, putting the index back on course to rise above its Liberation Day level. Stocks in Europe and Asia also rallied when the dollar strengthened on expectations that businesses with complex global supply chains will see relief, and the economic damage from tariffs will be lower than initially feared. But again, maybe they can start making orders right now. Those orders may be ready to be fulfilled. Maybe it's going to take a little bit of time to create those orders. Then they got to put it on a boat from China, which takes a couple of weeks typically. So, maybe we'll get enough of the swimsuits and barbecue stuff over here so our shelves aren't bare when that happens. But, we need some assurances that these are going to stay in place and there won't be another round of, high tariffs put on. Because again, this stuff takes time. You make an order, it doesn't show up tomorrow. Once it's in the warehouse, the Amazon warehouses, it might be able to show up tomorrow, but getting it into the Amazon warehouse takes weeks, in some cases months, right? So, not great news, but we'll take every bit we can. OpenAI's Stargate project in doubt. SoftBank's $100 billion gamble on America's AI infrastructure has stalled amid tariff-related uncertainty, Bloomberg said. Citing anonymous sources, SoftBank and OpenAI announced that the giant Stargate project earlier this year, but there's still no project financing template nor in-depth discussions on how banks are investors. The deal's main players are worried about how a recession could hurt the data center demand, and investors are increasingly risk-averse. The appearance of Chinese AI models that are cheaper than OpenAI's is also a complicating factor. The Stargate project. Welcome to the dawn of something massive. Deep in Texas, construction is underway on the world's largest AI data centers, part of a jaw-dropping $500 billion Stargate project. Yeah. Again, if you don't have any reasonable belief about what the future brings, you're just more risk averse. You are more, especially when you're talking about the kind of numbers that we're talking about here. $1 billion here, $1 billion there, that's kind of chump change. But when you start talking about $100 billion at risk, you're not rushing out to throw that money into a hole if you don't think that, there's going to be something in that hole. Apple won't blame prices on tariffs. The next iPhone models are likely to be more expensive, but you won't catch the Apple execs saying the T word. Rather than attributing price hikes to tariffs and risk upsetting of the delicate political balance, the company is considering touting the phone's new features and design changes as justification for the increases. Citing anonymous sources, the price changes would come as Apple faces pressure to relieve a stagnant product lineup with something bigger and bolder, Bloomberg says. Yeah, well, Amazon got themselves into a little bit of a hot water when they decided they were going to put a listing of, how much the tariffs are costing in addition to the normal price of everything. That did not hold. So Apple saw that and didn't want to get on the wrong side of the current administration or the president. So it looks like they're internally going to kind of Try and tiptoe through the minefield. Tiptoe through the field of mines. Remote workers may be unhappier. A new Gallup poll on workforce trends shows that fully remote employees are more engaged at work than their hybrid or on-site peers, but are less likely to be thriving in their overall lives. The report found 31% of remote workers feel enthusiastic about their work compared to 23% of their hybrid and on-site colleagues. However, they also report higher levels of negative emotions, and only 36% feel that they're doing well overall. This is there's one bit of data that's probably missing from this. They may have asked it, but it's not in the report. But they really should slice this with a slider that says, "Are you an introvert, an extrovert?" If you're an introvert, go all the way to the left. If you're an extrovert, go all the way to the right, and slice and dice the data that way. Because my wife and I both converted to remote work during the pandemic, and we're kind of on the opposite sides of that spectrum. My wife tends to be mostly an introvert. I tend to be more of an extrovert. When she's around people, she's perfectly capable of being around people and managing herself, but it sort of drains her. Whereas when I'm around people, I tend to get energy from them. I get a little bit more than I expend, and I walk away charged up, right? So when the pandemic happened and we both converted in working from our house, then she flowered in a lot of ways, right? She was more productive beyond just the fact that she wasn't in the car 2 hours a day for her commute, but she, got her work done, was happier, had more flexibility in her day, and her stress levels went down. I mean, the pandemic was the pandemic. We all had stress on the pandemic, but once we got past the pandemic and we were just in remote work by itself, my wife did better. She did better at her work. She did better at her job, and she felt happier overall. Me, again, I've worked on and off remotely through my whole career, so I didn't have any technical problems making that conversion, but I did feel like there was a cost when you spend your work day at your house, and a lot of your private time at your house. You do feel kind of insulated from the world, and the thing about getting out of the house and going to a job, you just end up bumping into more people, whether it's at the gas station or picking up groceries on the way home, instead of like waiting till the end of the week and doing one big trip, making several trips to the grocery store, all these kind of things where you're just sort of through life bumping into people, interacting with people. Can leave you feeling a little disconnected. So I get that, but again, that when you average out those numbers, that might show a trend. But if you were able to slice those numbers up, I bet you that people who identified more as introverts as opposed to extroverts would have a very different outcome in those numbers. This is the thing about data. How you ask the question will affect the kind of answers you get. AI cheating upends higher ed. College students cheating on assignments is nothing new, nor is anxiety about the ways of artificial intelligence will make it easier to do so. But according to New York Magazine, it's quickly reaching a crisis point, with some professors admitting that they'd rather quit teaching than spend hours looking at ChatGPT's fingerprints on their students' essays. Others worry about the long-term impact. Students are going to emerge from university with degrees and into the workforce who are essentially illiterate, one professor says. Essentially illiterate. Essentially illiterate. You know, I've worked in education on and off my whole career. I taught at the college level many decades ago now, but I taught at the college level. Yeah, I don't know. This is it's a tough question because I'm a person who is self-motivated, and learning is part of my identity. It's who I am. I learn things, I do things, I share that information. Those are kind of the core tenets of how I've lived my life, and I'm always looking for new opportunities to learn new stuff, build new things, and share that. So my perspective is a little different. Like, certainly there might be some classes that I'd be like, oh, this is not a class I care about, but I got to get it for my degree. I might be tempted to lean heavily on ChatGPT. But one thing that I found that's interesting about these LLMs is, if I'm writing an email, and it's a work email, and it's something I have to write, something I'm, not super engaged in, but I want to be professional. Before the LLMs, I would just bang out this very curt, not very just not very engaging email. I just be like, blurt, and I'd tie it up. It didn't feel very professional. It wasn't unprofessional, but it just didn't have a gloss of a professional communication. And so as soon as the LLMs came along, now that I have to, when I have to write one, I will still write what I want to say, and then I'll copy and paste that into the LLM, and I'll say, hey, can you expand on this or make it polish this up a little bit more? And 9 times out of 10, it's almost exactly what I need. It's a better version of writing it because I didn't really care to write that thing. I don't want to spend time on that. It's, I wrote down what I wanted to communicate. It did a better job of, communicating that in a way that's more polished and more welcoming or more whatever. And it's, while it's communicating the same thing, the language is completely different. And is that language my language? It's not. But again, it's a work email. Like, I don't necessarily need an original voice in my work emails. I need a professional voice in my work emails. But there have been other things that I've sat down to write, and I really put myself into it. I wrote a thing. I had an idea that I wanted to communicate. I toiled over it. I revised it. And I was like, just for the heck of it, let me just throw this in LLM. And it changed 2 words in this sentence, or it added one little sentence in there that ultimately probably wasn't all that necessary. It didn't do very much in changing that stuff, right? And that really comes down to, if you have an original thing to say, it doesn't have a whole lot to add to that. But if you just have a generic thing to say, it's going to completely rewrite the whole thing. So part of what students need to learn in growing up into a world of LLMs is understanding, again, programmers think all the time, what are we trying to accomplish here? At the end of the day, what are we trying to accomplish? If you're saying, I just need to get a grade to keep my scholarship, or I need a grade to satisfy my requirements, and you're not as interested in learning, you're going to take that shortcut. And, if you do that for one class a year or something like that, that's probably fine. No harm, no foul. If you're doing that for all your classes, And yeah, you're just wasting your money. What's the point? What is the point of that? Yeah. One of the things, I liked about teaching at the college level was, these people on some level, either themselves, uh, they're paying for it. This is voluntary. Nobody has to go to college. You know, whether your parents are paying for it or you're paying for it or you're taking out loans for it. This is a completely voluntary thing. And as a result, you know, generally speaking, my experience when I taught college was you could tell who was really engaged in the material and who was just taking the class for an easy credit or whatever it was, right? And, you got to figure that stuff out for yourself. You ain't cheating nobody in college but yourself. And especially if you're getting loans, for gosh sakes. If it's going to take you a decade to pay off the stuff you cheated for, oh boy. Not such a smart decision. No. All right, we're getting down towards the end of it. Anything in Google News? Let's see. Got the new, what's the latest? Last of Us episode 5 already. I have not been watching the season. My son and I are going to binge it once it's done. Klarna hiring back human help after going all in on AI. Yeah, you're going to see more and more of those stories, I think. Oh, this enthusiasm, buying the hype and all. What? That's interesting. Philips debuts 3D printable components to repair products. Philips Fixables empower consumers with 3D printable repair parts. That's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. I'm a big 3D printer. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 working 3D printers in my house. Top earning 10% responsible for the majority of global warming. Top earning 10% responsible for the majority of global warming. There you go. Job creators. Forget laptops. This pocket-sized PC folds out into a full workstation. That's kind of interesting. I like these little funky form factors. I've got from time to time, I go to a co-working space or I'll go to meeting at a coffee shop or something, and I gotta carry my laptop with me. And I've got an extra little portable monitor I take with me for a second monitor. But I've recently been kind of interested in these people who are taking along these little mini computers. And the extra screen so they don't have to carry everything. If I'm at the co-working space, I like two monitors for sure. I'm hunkered down. I'm doing work. But if it's a coffee date or if it's a meetup or something like that, I'm not going to be setting up 2 monitors. I just need access to my computer that I can carry, and lugging around my 17-inch laptop is not kind of cool. I am liking that. All right, we're getting down to the end of it. We back, come on, in 23 hours and 30 minutes to do this again. Hope you guys have had a good day. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you know anybody who's in the job market looking for a job in tech, or outside of tech and just need somebody to hang out with and listen to the news, feel free to share the stream with them. We do stream Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time on Twitch, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. So plenty of opportunities for us to connect. Share the word, spread the word. I'd appreciate it.